Welcome to the NPO 101 Series Fundraising Overview. My name is Maria Griffin with Spo-ka'nay Enterprises, and I am your trainer facilitator for this workshop. To provide comments or ask questions during the presentation, please enter them into the chat box. Click the chat button at the bottom of your screen. This will pull the chat box that will open to the right side of your Zoom interface. Please use the raise hand function under the reactions, and we will unmute your line to verbally ask questions during the Q&A portion of the session. Excuse me. Additionally, we ask that you select the speaker view option located at the top right side of your Zoom interface. This will allow you to see the speaker as they present or share information. And if you need technical assistance during the session, please type the issue into the chat box and one of our techs will respond to you. And finally, please be aware that today's session is being recorded. Closed captioning is available by clicking the CC icon at the bottom of your screen. So welcome to the NPO 101 series proposal writing process given by myself, Maria Griffin, and today's the October 12th version. And I usually start my trainings with an acknowledgement, and I've listened to many land acknowledgements, and in my opinion, this one is the most inclusive and equitable and statement that I've ever heard. And I felt that it belonged here with our trainings. So the truth, equity, and justice acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. So we begin this meeting acknowledging that we are on the ancestral lands of the Spo-ka'nay tribe of Indians and other tribes who are connected through a shared history of trade, celebration, and resources. We make this acknowledgement to pay respects to their elders, past and present, whose knowledge remains on the land and within their people. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in continuing to learn about such truths and actions we can take towards restorative justice. This is credited to Jenny Slagle, who is a Yakama Nation tribal member and Northern Arapaho descendant. She's with Inatai as a program officer, and she owns Indigenous Eats in Spokane, Washington. So thank you, Jenny, for such a wonderful thing. So as I said, my name is Maria Griffin. I am a Spokane tribal citizen, and I own Spo-ka'nay Enterprises, and I have core competencies in professional writing, training, and technical assistance. And I was asked to provide you guys with this workshop. And this is the last of 3 workshops that we've done this year in 2023. And so I know the agenda looks huge, but some of the things we'll get through really fast. So we'll take a look at the handouts. We'll go through the goal and learning objectives. We'll look at the different areas of this workshop, the program, project or proposal, proposal writing, request for proposal, the proposal team, a proposal calendar compliance, matrix, proposal components, and writing the proposal. So for the workshop handouts, I'll be referring to these during the training, and Brandon is going to put in the chat box a link to the Dropbox that has all these documents in there. So right now you will see grant readiness checklist, model for proposal development, a mind map, ATR request for proposal, which we'll actually be doing an activity with, RFP 360 proposal process ebook, and a compliance matrix. Additionally, I've added the Administration for Native American documents that they use for the proposals that they, for the request for, or no, not request anymore. It's called a Notice of Opportunities and Notice of Funding Opportunities. There we go. And they send out templates. And so I've included those templates because I'll be using them and I'll be referring to them during this presentation. Okay. Next slide. So to remind us what the holistic model is all about, we're going to be looking at the revenue management or fundraising aspect. And this is an area that falls under that topic. So the goal of this training is to provide participants with an overview of proposal writing process. And many other people will have different proposal writing processes. This is just my version of it that I found very helpful and that I like to use. So you'll find others out there that may be similar or maybe vastly different, but find something that works for you. So part of the learning objectives is that you'll be able to identify the phases of the grant application process. You'll be able to differentiate between goals and objectives. You'll be able to create actionable objectives, and then you'll review funding opportunities for eligibility that the opportunity aligns with the organizational programs and goals. Okay, so first question, what is it? Program, project, or proposal? What comes first? So where do we start? Program is the initiative to address a condition in the community being served. A project falls underneath the program because it drives the search for money to implement activities that the program needs to serve the community. And a proposal is the tool to find the resources to meet the project needs and align with proposal or program nonprofit organization goals and objectives. So each of these work together to make a change in the community and meet the community's needs. It also ensures sustainability within the programs and increases the opportunity for partnerships. Now, you may come across some organizations that are just focused on just bringing in money, not even thinking about what the program or their project needs are or what the community needs are. And they may not even align with the funder's mission, which are very important things. And you'll find that even though they've submitted a lot of proposals, they may not have won very much money because of that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, the importance of understanding how to align your project and program mission and goals and objectives with the funders and why they want to, and then why they want to give you the money. So we're going to start with programs here. And you'll notice some similarity between program and project, which we'll talk about next. But your organization have different initiatives or programs that serve its community needs. And the program's goal and objectives meet and aligns with the organization's mission. Now, this is important because that makes you a mission-driven organization. So each program has a goal with objectives that align with the organization's mission and ultimately its vision. Each program has an ideal budget that defines the cost of running the perfect program to meet all needs identified by the community. And that's something we haven't gone through in this series, and something I'm going to address next time, which is going to be next year, is a community needs assessment and how do you identify the needs that the community has. So that's a future workshop. Also, a realistic budget. Basically, this realistic budget is based on the money you currently have to run a project or a program, or run a program. Okay. Now, along with this program, you have to have a long-range community goal. That's why I stuck it here. It's basically, it expresses the current ideals of what a perfect community would be to the community members. That means you have to talk to your community members, find out what they think a community goal would be. And it should be your program goal could also be in alignment with the organizational mission as well as the long-range community goal. So they all should be working together. So some questions you should ask yourself or ask your community members is, if you could snap your fingers and create the perfect community, what would it look like? What would its characteristics be? What kind of opportunities would be available or to achieve stability and self-sufficiency? And what resources would be available for the members of the community? So those were questions that you can ask either yourselves as a group, as a team, or talk to your community members and see what they think of what an ideal community looks like, and so you can identify a long-range community goal. So a project is, even though the program serves its community needs, they do it through their implementation of projects. And now, if you remember, we kind of talked a little bit about projects earlier within the last two workshops, and that projects are short-term things. They have a beginning and an end time. And so the projects aren't necessarily what's going to be sustained, but they become implemented as part of a program piece, and that's what's going to be sustained. When you think about a project as a pilot, you know, is this pilot program or pilot project going to work in the community? Let's try it, test it out for 3 years or 5 years, depending on how long the foundation or funder pays you money for, and see how well it works. And then you go back and look at the lessons learned and see, okay, how do we put this project and program, because it did really well, let's put it permanently into the program as a program, or maybe it's another piece of a program. So you'll figure out how to put that together. That's how you make it sustainable. So projects of course, meet the program's goal and objectives. And each project has a goal with objectives that meet or that align with the program's objectives. You have, again, an ideal budget to defines the cost of running the perfect project to meet all the needs identified in the program's objectives. And then a realistic budget that defines how much money you have currently available, and not just money, but also in kind, other sources of funding or resources to run the project. Now, to do this, a project development process. Now, many organizations, and I've seen this happen, find a proposal, decide to develop a project that fits that proposal, but not fits their programs. Ideally, if you have a program, you should have some ideas of what projects would work to help move your community needs forward or addressing those community needs. So that's what's called a project development process. So you need to identify and define the opportunity or issue for change within the community. And then you need to explain the current situation by understanding the status of the current condition, statistics or data to link to the current condition, and that data should not be older than 5 years. It should be pretty current. You develop a project plan. So you have a project goal, objectives, activities, you make a work plan and a timeline. And then you do cost estimates and make an ideal budget. All of these are great to have in hand, in place before you even go look for money, because you can use all this information to develop your proposal narrative, to develop your proposal budget, to identify what your indicators are and your measurements are to show that your project is going to be achievable and it's going to be successful. And yes, you can make it sustainable. So this is preparing you to be writing a proposal. So I'm not going to read the summaries to you guys. You guys can see that, or you can look at the handouts because they're all in, of course, they're all in the handouts too. So the next piece is proposal writing. A lot of people call it grant writing, but ideally it's, as a technical writer, it's supposed to be proposal writing because you write a lot of different kinds of proposals, not just for grants. And the model here is something I got when I was taking a proposal writing class way back in 1999. So it was last century. We got this. I got this. And it hasn't changed, which is good to know that this hasn't changed at all because I checked through my work that I have now and stuff. And so you start with all this other stuff at the top. But we're going to be focusing on today is plan proposal writing, which is also proposal management. We're going to cover some things under writing a proposal and submitting a proposal. So all those little things that come underneath that. So I thought you guys would like to have this and put it on your wall. So when you do put together a proposal, you know what you need to look at. Okay. So why do people write proposals? Well, ideally, as I said before, it's a tool for managing change. And I know a lot of people are afraid of change, but change is an ally. And change creates new opportunities for growth in advancing business, organization, or research. And proposals are about who is doing what, for whom, and for how much. So the proposal writing process, I didn't want to put an acronym there. PWP just sounds kind of weird. But anyway, proposal writing process. So proposals address these fundamental questions. What is the current situation? What is needed to improve the situation? What is a good plan for improving the situation? And then why are you, as the bidder or the grantee, potential grantee, the best qualified people to do the work? How much will the work cost? And what are the tangible benefits of the plan? So that's exactly what you have to answer with your proposal. And then there's different phases. You have the inventing phase, which is putting ideas on paper and identifying persuasive statements that will convince grantors to fund the proposal. Basically, you're going to brainstorm or you're going to mind map. You're going to develop a zero draft. When I was teaching at the university, I would tell my students, it's not just a zero draft, it's your vomit draft. You're throwing everything on the page. You're not organizing anything, you're just throwing it on the page. So that's what inventing is. And I've included a mind map in your documents in the Dropbox link. So then when you have all that information and stuff, you start writing and designing a rough draft of the proposal. And basically the rough draft that's it. And it may not be just one, it may be several rough drafts because you're going to have to add some things. You go back and forth and reading the RFP, or you go back and looking at your proposal development or your project development that you did to see what can be put in there. So drafting is a continuous thing. And then you can get into the revising piece. This is when you start looking at putting together that final document, that you're crafting the organization, style, and design of the draft. You're looking at the formatting pieces that the RFP is requiring. So that's what revising is. And then you edit, you polish the draft for the final submission. There's also what's called by the numbers. So you identify the funding opportunity and read the guidelines. Now, as we talked about the funding opportunities, you have to have your mission and understand what that is and understand what the mission of the funder is so that they are in alignment. So you read and review the project and or program development pieces, and then you assemble a proposal writing team. You develop a proposal writing timeline, and then you assign team responsibilities. You edit and revise project documents as needed to match the application requirements, basically the compliance check. You prepare all the attachments that are required. You submit the grant before the due date. It should be grant application or proposal before the due date. And when funded, send a thank you letter. Now, I know those 9 steps seem pretty relatively easy, but each of those 9 steps are loaded with lots of work that you yourself will do, your team will do, anybody else who's working with you will do, and it will take a lot of time. So there's a summary of the proposal writing section that we just went over. So you guys can read that. Whew, how's our time looking? Oh, we're doing pretty good. Okay. So the request for proposal. What is a request for proposal? Well, since I've been throwing around request for proposal and RFP, I thought it was a good time to define this. So it's a document provided by a funder, which can be grant government, it can be private, it can be wherever you find funders, and that asks for a proposal, application, or a bid to be submitted for services, products, or assets by a specific due date. You also see them named Notice of Funding Opportunity. I already mentioned that for the Administration for Native Americans. A request for application. You can also see a request for information. There's a lot of different names of it, but basically they're asking people to come in, give them a proposal so they can give them money. So the RFP, NOFO, or RFA includes all information needed to complete the application, which may be a proposal. So we'll talk about this here in just a second. Now, understanding the RFP. I know some of you have seen some RFPs that are really, really small that can either be a page long, or you've seen some that have been like 85 to 100 pages in length. And some of them can be very daunting and very intimidating to see, you know, oh my gosh, what's all these pages? What do I have to read? And to begin with, before you even start writing the proposal, you have to understand the RFP and understand what's in it. So you have to download it if you have access to where they've posted it, or you might have received it specifically from a funder who's inviting you to submit a proposal. But they also match your organizational mission, so you guys are in alignment. They may request a PDF, a soft copy submission, either through uploading to an email or through some specific place that they want you to send it, a direct input of information to an online application, or paper or hard copy submission. And that's rarely ever happening now. Everybody's gone through internet online stuff. And then the RFPs are not consistent among grantors. So you have to read them carefully for submission requirements. And that means everybody requests something different or something similar. So you just have to read it and make sure you have that. Now, every foundation government agency has a different format, guidelines, and requirements. They may even require you to write with certain citation styles like Chicago or APA or MLA, just depends. Sometimes they may not have that. So your job is to download the RFP as a PDF onto a shared drive for a team reference, and do not mark this version. I mean, everybody, what your team will do is that they will go into the shared drive, download that RFP for themselves, and that's the version that they'll mark up. You always want to have a clean copy of your RFP so you can always go back for reference. And And then each team member, depending on their role, they'll be marking it up with notes, flags, keeping it in their files, going back and referring to it at all to make sure that they got what they needed. But before they do that, and to understand the RFP, you need to read it at least 5 times. And I know people are rolling their eyes and saying, what, 5 times? There's a reason for this. And with my experience doing this work for the last, oh God, I hate to say this, 35 years, it's you want to make sure you understand the RFP because you learn something each time you read it. So the first reading, you do not skim and mark or take notes when the exception is noted below. We'll talk about that. You read to get a feel of the language and how it's used by the grantor. This is important because one of the things I've learned is if you use the same language that the grantor uses, if you use the same cadence and of how their words are put in order and how they read rhythmically, when they read your or review your application, they will notice something similar and familiar and be comfortable with it. So you want to make sure you follow that type, the language and the cadence. And then you want to understand the context in which the award will be made. And then you want to determine, first of all, if you're eligible for the award. So you read the eligibility section. If you're not eligible, stop here. No use reading the rest of the 85 pages, right? You know, eligibility will be within the first 10 pages. So at least you know it's there. If you are eligible, keep going. If you're not sure, note the eligibility criteria, stop here and ask those who would know if the organization is eligible, and then go on to the next RFP. So that's what the first reading is about. And then once that's gone through, the second reading, you highlight the due dates for specific items. And those items can be the letter of inquiry. There may be a letter of inquiry. There may not be letters of support or recommendations from previous funders. And then, of course, the proposal due date. Identify and highlight the way the proposal will be submitted. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be email? Are you going to have to print and ship it? Are you going to have to bind it? You know, how are you going to submit this proposal? And then identify and highlight the portal if an online submission and registration is required. This is extremely important, especially for government applications. You may have to go through grants.gov. You may have to go through sam.gov first. You may have to go through ERA Commons. It just depends on the government agency, and each government agency uses their own specialized portal. You have to register right away. Do it at once. I mean, you could stop your reading right there and go take care of it because it can take up to 6 weeks to be accepted. And I have known some people who decided, oh, we can do it later. And they do it like the day before and they find out, oh, you'll be notified in 2 weeks whether or not you've been accepted, 3 weeks, and they've lost the window. So do this at once. That's why I've bolded it, added 3 exclamation points, capitalized most of it, and underlined it. So, it's a very important thing. And then you also develop your timeline and calendar at this part, at least started at this time. And we'll go over that next. So then you identify and list under the third reading, you'll identify and list the requirements. Are there conferences you have to go to? Are there reports you have to submit? What kind of key personnel are required? All of these things that the grantor wants that are required for your proposal. And then you need to identify and list any formatting requirements. If you're going to submit a PDF or a Word document, they may want a certain number of margins. They may want a certain number of pages per section. They might want, attachments. What kind of attachments? If they have a budget template, they may want you to fill out the budget template that's so different than you've ever seen. And believe me, there are people like that have the ideas of what a budget template should look like. And then you have to learn that budget template. So, you want to make sure you understand everything's going on there. And then you identify and highlight any of your budget requirements. That means if you're going through and you find out there's conferences, do you have to travel? How many people have to go? What's the travel cost going to be? You start listing those things in the margins for whoever is doing the budget. They'll probably go through and start listing their other direct costs or ODCs so that they know what they have to price out. So that's what the third reading is about. You also develop your questions about the RFP. And what's kind of nice is that most of the funders out there will have a certain period of time where you can send in your questions about the RFP. And then they will answer that in one big document by after a certain period of time, or they'll just keep adding questions. It just depends on the funder. And then also there may be additional information provided about the RFP. There may be a question and answer webinar. And then if there is, take notes during the webinar. Don't rely on your memory, because there may be items that are not in the RFP that are in the question and answer webinars that they give you information about that you have to put into your proposal that they forgot to put in the RFP, and they say, oh, we forgot to add this to RFP, but do this thing here and make a note of that and put it in your copy of your RFP, or you can put it so that, or add an addendum to the clean one that you have on the shared drive saying RFP addendum. This is what's said in the webinar, so we need to make sure we do this. And then add all the due dates to the timeline and calendar. Now, the fourth reading, you're reading to see if the information is relevant to your project or your program. You're looking for gaps that your program doesn't have, that your program doesn't cover. And you need to identify potential partners who can cover those gaps. Once you have that information, you look around for any partners that that can help you fill those gaps and have them review the RFP and join in proposal meetings. They may be considered subcontractors, or you may just have to hire one or two of their people as temporary employees to cover those gaps, but that's something you need to keep in mind. And then the last reading is just do not skim a mark. You're, again, reading to make sure you haven't missed anything. And if you have missed something, this is where you can do highlight or miss or needs clarification, so you can ask those questions again. So I know it's hard to sit down and set aside time to read 5 times, but at least you've done your due diligence in making sure you understand what's in the RFP. So the only point of the summary I want you to know is the very bottom one, very bottom bullet says, do not give out the due date of the proposal to anyone outside of your team, including your partners. This is for good reason, because if you give them the due date of the proposal, dollars to donuts, you won't get the paperwork that you need for them until the day of the proposal submission, which you don't want to happen. So you give it to them early. So I'm going to say, so it's very important, and I'll say it a couple more times as we go through here, but make sure you keep that due date close to the chest and very private to your organization. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick review here, quick activity. And we're going to break you guys out into 2 breakout rooms. And if, Brandon, if you could post the link to the ATR RFP, or if you guys gotten into your Dropbox and download the ATR RFP, because this is what we're going to be looking at. And what I'd like for you guys to do is discuss, you can divide it among yourselves, discuss the eligibility, what the eligibility criteria are, what the funding amounts are, if there's a letter of inquiry, what the due dates are, and if there's any specific requirements that ATR wants that you haven't seen before in other RFPs that you may have looked at. So does everybody have access to the ATR RFP? Okay. You can raise your hand or type yes or whatever. Okay, thanks, Brandon, for posting that link in the chat box. Okay, everybody ready? We're going to go ahead and be broken into 2 groups. And 10 minutes starts. So we'll get back together at 12:42. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Now, if you want to add to the discussion, we're going to discuss it for a couple of minutes. Is there anything about this RFP that I shared with you guys that caught your eye?
I think it was beautifully written. I love it. It was in sequential order. It was easy to read. As somebody who does the primary grant writing for the organization, that is a grant writer's dream. Like, instead of having to hunt for information, it was just there, bold, beautiful.
It's a very old one. I've had this one for over 20 years, so I like to use it as an example because it's that way. And then I get to tell you guys, not all RFPs are written so nicely. So you have to mostly hunt for a lot of the information. So Thank you, Ash. Anybody else? No? Okay. All right. If you have any more comments, someone put it in the chat. Okay. Oh, that's okay. That's a private message. Never mind. All right. So we'll go ahead and continue on with our presentation then. Thank you all for looking that over. I'm glad you had a chance to at least experience doing a first reading on an RFP. So let's talk a little bit about the proposal team. Now, proposal team is because the proposal writing is a big job and it can be a full-time job, especially if one person's doing it, it can end up being more than a full-time job. So you have to be organized, focused, efficient, and you definitely need a team. Um, from Instrumental, I found this proposal team formula, which I thought was kind of interesting, but it says a strong grant team, or it should be proposal writing team, equals R plus 3 C's. And the R means you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities. The first C is efficient communication and knowledge sharing. The next C is team culture shared by everybody, and then a great collaboration between team members. So you have to communicate, you have to share your knowledge, you need to collaborate and make sure everybody is on the same page. Um, oh, yeah, Heather said she loves what it funded. I think I shared with everybody the ATR became the Social Justice League, I think in Seattle. So that's one of the first things that they used to fund over 20 years ago. To select the team, and you might want to consider recruiting the following people for the team. Your organization, if you have an in-house proposal writer or you hire a consultant, the director, that could be the executive director, or it could be just that particular initiative director or whoever understands the program. Definitely the program manager, because they have the experience and the subject matter expertise about the program that the project's going to be working under. Any staff, board members, volunteers assigned to the needs to be met so that they understand they can add information to the proposal as well. Of course, a fiscal officer, an agent, a finance manager, um, anybody who works with budgets and who understands how to put a budget together. And then, of course, one or two other colleagues to read it and or advise or provide feedback. That those colleagues need to be outside the proposal team, and they do not touch or work with that proposal until it's just about ready to be submitted, because they are your outsiders. They're going to be your readers who have no attachment to what you put together and be able to provide good feedback for you. Now, the team roles, you have the proposal manager, who is the leader. They make assignments, and that checks the compliance metrics for completion. You also have a writer or writers, or if you have technical writers, if available, those will help write it. The organization subject matter expert on the proposed project, which again could be the program director, or it could be someone, a volunteer who understands the needs from the community. Definitely a proposal budget writer. That again could be your accountant, a bookkeeper, somebody in the organization who understands numbers and justification and can write the budget and justification, and a proposal assistant. These people are very important. They take any meeting notes, they help with the map making during the inventing part of the proposal piece. They gather all the information for the attachments, fill out the attachments, or actually gather the attachments themselves if you already have them available. So we're only going to focus on the proposal manager just because of the time amount we have. And the proposal manager is the team leader. They are the ones who are informed about the project. They work hand in hand with the subject knowledge experts so they understand what's going on. If there are project development documents, they read those project development documents, understand how it works. They understand the RFP inside and out. If not everybody reads the thing 5 times, this person reads it at least 6 to 7 times or more. And they especially understand the proposal evaluation criteria, and they write to that, because that's the evaluation criteria that allows you to win or lose that proposal. They understand milestones during the development, and they create proposal management documents such as calendar and compliance matrices. Next slide. And then the proposal manager also selects the proposal team and facilitates team meetings. They ask people if they want to be on the proposal team and then invite them to be on the proposal team. And they're chosen, they choose based on their expertise and their ability to help get this completed in a period of time. And then they provide direction to the entire proposal team so everybody's moving at the same direction. And they may or may not be a proposal writer, but they are the reviser to bring one voice to the proposal. I mean, if you have a team of 5 people and 5 people are writing different sections, that person has to be able to take everybody's different voice and write it to the one voice, especially a voice that mimics what's the under the RFP and the same language and the same type of cadence that RFP uses. So there's different guidelines that you use. One of the things that your team should want to follow is that they all review, provide input into, and follow the proposal management documents. So the RFP, the timeline, assignments, meeting notes, etc. They also provide assigned items per the calendar, and earlier is always welcome. Talking as a proposal manager myself, I loved it when my team could turn in things earlier because it gave me a chance to look over and compare it to the compliance matrix. And if something needed to be added, I could send it back and say, no, I need you to add this, or I need you to change that, or great job, no changes needed. So, the manager is the one that actually gives the team kudos and stuff. The team members follow the proposals team's process, and team members are valued for their input, either written or verbal, and are empowered to ask questions and provide suggestions. One thing that a proposal team doesn't really know if they're new to becoming a proposal team is that the only person that will give them thanks and give them encouragement and help them write a good proposal is the proposal manager. In my experience, I've written a lot of proposals, and I never really got any thank yous from anybody other than my immediate supervisor. So, who was most likely to be the proposal manager. So it's a job that's not really acknowledged, but it's a very important job. Some other guidelines is that the team actually reads for understanding and to make sure that they understand what it is the funder wants. With proposal templates are set up to mirror the proposal evaluation criteria, including the scoring criteria. The team writes from a place of authority. Basically, they demonstrate the organization's ability to handle the project, their capability. They write simply and clearly, meaning they don't use $10,000 words. They use small words all the time, or whatever words fit into that cadence that the RFP has. And you write to the audience. And key is writing to the RFP. You follow the language that is written within it, plain language, emotional language, strength-based, need-based, whatever. And then you revise and edit for clarity so they understand what you're saying. Don't assume they know what you're talking about. Always write as if your audience doesn't know anything about your project. Don't assume that they do, or assume that they know something similar. You need to tell them everything, even though if it seems like, well, they really don't need to know this. Well, yes, they do. And I'll just let you guys read the summary for a proposal team. So we got another hour, but I wanted to save time for you guys to have discussion and to ask questions. So the next piece here is the proposal calendar and compliance matrix. Now, creating a proposal calendar is really kind of different because you have to start, you can use a regular calendar or a blank piece of paper, but you have to start backwards. So you start with a proposal when its due date and then work back through to when the RFP was released. And I have a visual of what this looks like, but I'm going to go verbalize it first. So you're going to set an internal deadline 1 week before the actual due date to allow for any crises or issues that arise. And if you need to ship a proposal, because remember the 2002 one that you looked at, you had to put it in paper, make 10 copies and send it. You need to set the deadline for 10 days before the actual due date to allow for printing and shipping delays. And then set dates for team meetings. And then you need to set dates for the milestones that were identified when you read through the RFP. Budget completed, when the project narrative needs to be done, any attachments collected, letters of support collected, etc. And then you set block dates for writing, budget work, information gathering, revising, review, editing, all these things here. And then you meet with the team to ensure that everybody understands the calendar. If you have to go through the calendar step by step, that's a good thing. Make sure everybody understands what the calendar is meant to be. Now, here's what an example calendar looks like. This is not off the ATR RFP, but it's definitely a calendar that I put together a long time ago. So you see, I started on a Monday here when the funding opportunity was released, and then I put in there all the different things I expected the team to do. PM refers to proposal manager. So you see that there. Put in the team meeting and stuff, and then um, all these different things that need to happen. And when the draft starts, this is what I mean about drafting, um, having those block dates in place. And then the next one is when the drafts are due. When again, here's when the milestones come in, team review to align narrative with budget. And then this big green thing, items from others due today. It's the 2 week mark before the actual proposal due date. If you're feeling like you're not sure you're going to get what you need from your partners, you can set the due date for 2 weeks before your internal due date. Um, so then this is the date that you tell your partners. Again, don't tell them that it's due on the 13th. You tell them it's due on the 30th. And then you revise in final editing, you compile your proposal for online submission, and then you submit it this day. The reason why you submit your online proposals a week before the proposal due date, because there is a big chance on the day that it's due, and I've had this happen to a lot of my clients, they don't submit it a few days before, so they submit it the day it's due. And the online portal is so busy, they can't get through and they can't submit their proposal because others are submitting their proposal and taking up all the bandwidth. So ideally, you should submit it a week before the actual due date because if there's any issues, like if the portal goes down or it's on maintenance or something's not going right, you have time to contact the funder and say, hey, I tried to submit this. Is there another way I can submit this? Can I email it to you to show that I wanted to submit it and then post it in the portal once it's up and running? At least you have time to do that. Because if you wait for the last minute and you try to do that, they're going to deny you. But if you do it a week beforehand and say, oh, they were ready, okay, we'll give you permission to submit it. So, you have to be sure you're aware of that. And then the last 2 days is basically complete any hard copy or soft copy of files that you have and send thank you letters to your partners to thank them for helping you do this. And then you guys hope that you have a successful proposal. So the only thing I want to talk about here in the summary is that, again, never, ever tell anyone outside the team the actual proposal deadline. Give them a date 2 weeks before the actual due date. And this includes any partners or subcontractors to make sure that you get the documents you need when you need them. And another thing also I wanted to make sure that you understand that this calendar is a fluid document to a point. Any deadlines set in the RFP are not negotiable. You have to meet those deadlines unless they've uploaded changes on their website or if you're part of a thing where they send information to you about the deadline or anything going on with the RFP. If there's been changes to the RFP, you have to make sure that anything in that RFP is posted in your calendar and that those deadlines are set. But any of the work leading to those deadlines are flexible based on the team's work and how they do together and how it's earlier. If you have a time to move things around a little bit, you have those extra days in there for a reason. So in case crises happen or something occurs. All right, the compliance matrix. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's a it can either be a paper document like you have in the Dropbox files. There's an example there that's actually kind of like a checklist, or you can have a grid to actually identify all the items that are required by the RFP. So here's the grid. And you can set this up in Excel if you want, or you can put it in Word. But these different headings here, if you go across the top here where it says proposal heading, instructions, evaluation criteria, statement of work, other RFP, and notes. Now the letters here, L, M, and C, all those are seen in federal government notice of funding opportunities, NOFOs. And that's what this is here on the left-hand side is an example of a cover page for a request for proposal for a federal government grant. And you go through there and you put in all that information and instructions and their evaluation criteria. You look at the proposal heading and you put that information there. And you can use this proposal heading as an outline to your actual proposal that you're preparing for this RFP. So it's just a tool to make sure that you identify, track, and meet each RFP requirement. And this is what the proposal manager will put together for everybody to look at and follow. And it can be updated as you find out new information, or it can be useful in making sure you understand how each piece works together. All right, proposal components. So there's proposal areas, and you have 4 areas really. You have the organizational capacity, which talks about your organization, that you have the capability to do the work, that you have an organization chart, you have project personnel, you have biographies for your personnel, you have resumes for your personnel, and you have the long-range community goal. Under the project plan method, you have the current community condition, project goal, objectives, and tasks and activities. For the budget, which is the 3rd area, it's a line item, usually an Excel worksheet, that lists resources and services to complete the project. And these items come from the ODCs and other costs marked in the RFP. The budget justification narrative describes how each line item cost is calculated and includes a short explanation of why it is necessary for the project. Now, these 10 different pieces, they may or may not be in a funding RFP because not everybody has all these things, but most of them may be there together. The summary and abstract, this is written last. An introduction, it's your take on the RFP goal, includes organization information to meet the RFP goal. This is where you talk about how your organization aligns with the grantor's goals for this request for proposal. Talks about, then you go to the current community condition, which is basically the statement of need, why you need this money, why your community needs this money. Then you list your project goal and objectives, a project plan, which explains how the project will be completed. Project timeline may not always be required. Project evaluation, basically your key performance indicators on how you know your project will be considered successful. Sustainability, what kind of things are you looking at as sustaining this project into becoming a part of a program? And then budget and justification and appendices. So you'll see these pieces. I'm not going to read these to you. You guys can look at this again. Writing the proposal. Okay, now that we've gotten through all the other stuff, now we can talk about writing the proposal. Basically, where do you start? You have to identify which of the proposal components are readily available, that there's only minor editing needed. If you have the attachments already filled in, what needs work, revising to match the RFP. If you've already got a project plan in place and you've already developed it, you might want to take a look at it to see what needs to be revised to match the RFP. And then if you have to write new material, what needs to be written. So you need to identify what you want to do first. Do you want to start with a new material? Are certain proposal team members going to work on the readily available? Some going to work on the need work? So this is something to think about. This is what I think about when I have a proposal to work on. I think about all these things here. So I had to download all this information from my head so you guys would understand this. So then you look at downloading any templates that the grantor provides. If they have a template, if they have a proposal narrative, it may not be available, but it may be, especially if it's an online piece, they sometimes do provide you with a budget template. And you may have to go into the online portal once you sign in for it and stuff. And some do allow you to download a PDF of all the questions, but make sure you don't go through the whole piece and accidentally hit submit, because if you do and you haven't filled in anything, you've kind of submitted your proposal already and there's nothing there. So you're really in a boatload of trouble. So be aware when you're on the portal, what you're pressing, what buttons you're looking at, and hopefully you can get a PDF of all the questions that they ask. It may not be in the RFP. Some do, some people don't have it, or they may be incorrect and not correct. You may have to merge what they give you in the RFP and what's actually on the portal. I did that for a recent grant application I worked on for a client of mine. It was in the RFP, but when I checked it against what's on the portal, it was totally different. So you have to be aware of those things. And that's when a question arises. How come the questions are different in the RFP than versus in the portal? What do we use? So, and then you can also use a federal government template. They're really good about providing templates on how to fill things out. The Administration for Native Americans, I've been using their templates here in this project and this presentation, and you'll be seeing here in a few minutes, but they're also located in the Dropbox link. And Brandon, if you can post that again so everybody make sure they have it. I have the objective work plan, the budget workbook, and also their outcome tracker, so you guys can see how those work. All right. So I kind of mentioned this a little earlier that you may have to recreate a Word document for the proposal narrative, especially if you're going to upload or copying and pasting to an online portal. You take that PDF, if you can, print it out with all the questions, export it to a Word document and fix it up so you can read it. And then you fill out, because there's going to be character or word number lengths that you have to adhere to. And so you want to make sure you hit those numbers correctly, or how many words there are in this. Like if you're only allowed 1,500 words, how actually is that, or 500 words, or 5,000 characters? You want to make sure you follow that, or else if you go on and on and on and you don't hit it, you go past that, it's going to cut out a lot of your explanation. So a Word document is a good place to start working on your online submissions in, and then you can just copy from there and put that in the portal. All right, so I'm going to provide examples of a long-range community goal, current community condition statement, project goal, project objectives, key activities and tasks, and project evaluation, right? All right, so for a long-range community goal example, the community has identified a major issue, and that is unemployment. And the ideal community condition would be jobs for everybody. So the long-range community goal, a realistic one, is all employable community members ages 25 to 50 will be able to access living wage permanent jobs. And as you can see in the bottom here, where it says ANA Project Planning and Development Manual 2015, this is where I've got this ideas from. So a current community condition example would be the unemployment rate of the 75 single parents in our community is 75% and has been at or above that rate for 2 years because their job skills and experience do not match current job requirements. Now, this information came from data or a community needs assessment that this organization did to find out, okay, so who is the most vulnerable in our community that doesn't have jobs? And it would be single parents. And so they wanted to find out how many single parents there were in the community. So they added that to the survey. Then they asked those people if they're employed, and how have they been employed at certain times in the last 2 years? Is it full-time, part-time, unemployed? So that's where all these numbers came from. And so that's something that that the organization needs to do to get a current community condition. Now, the project goal then is to decrease the unemployment rate of single parents in our community. Again, as part of the project narrative, you can explain that the project goal came about because we were looking at the most vulnerable people in our community, and of course, that's children. And how many children have single parents? And they know if the single parents aren't employed, that's going to affect the quality of life for the children. So that's where that came from. So to summarize these, you have your long-range community goal. All employable community members ages 25 to 50 will be able to access living wage permanent jobs. The current community condition about the unemployment rate of the 75 single parents and how it's 75% and has been for 2 years. And it's because their job skills and experience do not match current job requirements. And then the project goal is to decrease the unemployment rate of single parents in our community. So objectives. Now, objectives can be up to usually 1 to 2 pages in length, and it leads to the achievement of the project goal. And ideally, you should have no more than 3 objectives unless required by the RFP. Because if you only have a short-term project, like say 3 years, maybe you can do 1 objective a year, or maybe parts of 1 and 2 go together, and then 2 and 3, however that works out. But you want to make sure you have no more than 3 concrete objectives. Less than 3 is fine. And when you see your RFPs out there, they're going to be some kind of SMART objective. It may have a different acronym, but they're going to follow similar things. Like, are they going to be specific? Do they identify the results or outcomes that will be achieved? Will they be measurable? How are they going to be measured? And how is the progress of completion will be measured? Are they achievable? Will they be completed within the proposed time frame? Do they have the resources to be completed? Are they relevant to the project goal? The problem statement is basically the long-term community or the current community condition, the project goal and community to be served, so they have to be relevant to that. And time-bound, because remember, projects are short-term things. So do they have an ending date that reflects the completion within the project period? So that's what an objective is, a SMART objective. And as I said, you'll see different acronyms for others, but as long as you sit down and really look at what those mean, you'll get an idea of how to set them up. So for a specific objective, that means they have to describe the results and they have to describe the action. So some questions to ask yourself is, what are we going to do with or with whom? Why is this important to do? What needs to happen? And will this step take us to the desired results? So an example, a draft objective 1 says, expand our center to include job skills training. Okay, that's a fair draft, but we need to make it specific. So we say expand our job center with a job skills training program for single parents, because you want to know who it's for and what exactly is this. So this makes it a little more specific. So next, we look at the measurable. How do we measure the objectives achievement or progress? What kind of variety of measures that will make our progress more reliable? So you want to ask, how will you know you've achieved it? So taking your objective 1, that's specific, and making it measurable, you expand our job center to assist 80%, which is 45 of the 56 of the unemployed single parents in our community with job skills training. Now, if you remember back to when we talked about the community condition, is that 75% of the 75 single parents were unemployed. That was the unemployment rate. So that number 56 is actually 75% of the 75 single parents that were unemployed. And so we want to assist 45 of them, or 80% of that 75%, to with job skills training. So that's what this measurable is about. So that's where all that math came from. I just want to make sure you guys understood that. I didn't just pull it out of the air. Okay. Now to make it achievable. So can it be achieved with the time and resources available? So you ask yourself, what is available for this? Staff, time, skills, and money. Has this been done before? If it has been done before, why hasn't it continued? Well, you might have to go back and see if there's any lessons learned that you might apply to this. Have limitations been assessed? Maybe there were limitations that haven't been looked at yet. That might be something you need to think about to find an achievable piece for this objective. So going from measurable to an achievable, again, we expand our job center to assist 80% of the unemployed single parents at or below the poverty level in our community with job skills training and place 30 participants in permanent living wage jobs. So there's the achievable. So 30 of the 45 will have permanent living wage jobs. So that's about 50%, not quite 50% of the 75 parents that need jobs. It's close to 50%. So, okay, now we have to make sure it's relevant. So that means, will the objective help you achieve the project goal? Is this what the project and community needs? Now, this is an important question because it may throw you off. That's why I have this one bullet here in red. It may be something you want to work on, but not what the project needs to achieve the project goal. Remember, you're trying to achieve the project goal. Even if the community, if the community needs it and you really want this, maybe you're not looking at this correctly. Maybe you need to go back and reevaluate your objectives. Maybe you picked the wrong way to go with that. So this is a really good point to really identify. Is this what the project and the community needs as it pertains to the project goal? So we've done achievable, and I'm sorry, I forgot to put that cute little arrow on the side there, but now we need to make it relevant. So what we added in orange to all this is we're using this with, let's see, single parents at or below the poverty level in our community with job training skills using the DOL program materials with cultural modifications and place 30 participants in permanent living wage jobs. So the relevancy is the DOL, Department of Labor program materials, and with cultural modifications that your project team will do. All right, now time bound. This is the last piece. You have to make sure there's a deadline and there's a time frame that this objective needs to be accomplished in. So you have to think about that. And that can be part of the entire time that the funder has in their requirements that your project has to go for 3 years or 18 months or however 5 years, whatever it is in there. So you can set that time-bound piece for this objective. It doesn't have to be through the whole entire amount of time that the project's supposed to be in place. It can be a part pieces of it, like it can be part of the year 1 to through year 2, or it can be just year 2. It just depends on how your project's been set up. So for our project here, we added by the end of 36 months. So this is the entire objective now for objective 1. So here's the project goal, and then here's objective 1. So as you can see, as we went through those steps, adding those little pieces as we go along, it made it a SMART objective because it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. All right, so we're going to talk about the project work plan next. So the project narrative that you'll be writing describes the overarching activities about how the goal will be accomplished and the basic timelines needed. But the work plan actually details putting in the detailed activities and the timelines that are going to be completed. And so these work plans also include each objective and list key activities and task them in a logical sequence. So here's what it looks like. Oh, come on. All right. There we go. So, the looks like is on the next slide. Sorry about that. So the work plan allows anyone involved in the project to know what each next step is. It allows who will be leading and involved with the task and when it needs to start and end. So it's basically telling people when to do things, when they need to do it. And it demonstrates how the tasks should build upon one another towards accomplishing the objective. So here's the work plan example. And now this is taken from an ANA document. They have project work plans And this is the layout of it, but it's not prettily colored like this. It's black and white. And again, that is also in your workshop handouts in the link that Brandon has provided in the chat box. Thank you, Brandon. So you have the project title, you have the project goal, you have the objective one, you have the activities on the left-hand column, you have the outputs in the next column, you have the project staff, the start date, and the end date. So you put them in sequential order. So of course, what we're going to do is hire and orient staff. And so the outputs are the 4 new positions: the project director, admin assistant, trainer, and outreach specialist. You're going to have to set forth a steering committee. So you're going to have 11 meetings, sign-in sheets, meeting minutes, and the project staff responsible for that is the PD and the AA, and the dates when it's going to be completed, and then etc. So you can see how all of these work and getting an idea. And I only have 6 here because that's all I'll fit on here. But there are some places that they may have as many as 25 activities or more. Some may even only just have 5, some 1. So you just want to make sure each objective has all the activities that are there and start and end dates. The next piece is the project evaluation, which is the indicators and the outcomes. This is a very important piece. A lot of people are scared of project evaluation because data and evaluation brings up things related to math, and a lot of people don't like math or statistics and stuff. So hopefully this will help your anxiety with this. So project evaluation, it measures the success of objective completion with the use of indicators, outcomes, and outputs. And indicators and outcomes to demonstrate how the lives of the community members are improved and not replaced by outputs. So each objective has one primary indicator and one primary outcome. So an indicator illustrates how the project will track progress towards a primary outcome, and the outcome is a positive measured change. So the change reduces or eliminates the community condition for which the project is designed. So here's the goal, project goal, and the project objective. So the objective 1 indicator is the employment of single parents, and the objective 1 outcome is 30 unemployed single parents will access permanent living wage jobs. So that's pretty straightforward there. The outputs basically are the resulting products or services relevant to the project that are created by the objective. So these are a means of measuring means for measuring is a clear description of how positive changes in indicators will be measured. So for here, I have the objective listed, the indicator, which we just covered, the outcome. Now the outputs are going to be 45 unemployed single parent trainees enrolled. And because there's 45, they have to sign a training skills contract to make sure that they go through with what they've agreed to do. And although it's not listed here, we will also provide 20 subsidized daycare positions, basically, or 20, excuse me. So 45 of the trainees will be eligible to receive 20 subsidized daycare positions, because remember, they're all single parents. They're going to need daycare. But hopefully, as they go through the budget, we'll be able to provide 45 subsidized daycare positions. That would be good. And then means to measure is the possible measurable change by the outcome is the employment of 30 unemployed single parents. And this is what the outcome tracker looks like. And again, there's an example of, not an example, but an actual template of this in the workshop handouts. And this again came from the Administration for Native Americans. And you can see how they have this all set up. Long range goal, community condition, project goal, objective 1, the outcome, the indicator, means of measure, the baseline year, which means the year that they've applied, which is 0. Year 1 is 10. If I had more room, I would have put year 2 and 3, and that they would also be 10. So at the end of the 3rd year, as we said, at the end of 36 months, we will have 30 participants in permanent living wage jobs. So that would be on there. And then the outputs are listed here that they're 45 unemployed single parent trainees, etc. So as I said, I'm hoping that this person who put this together was able to find more money to put in there for 45 subsidized daycare positions. Okay, so summary of writing the proposal. I'm not gonna go over this. You can see this again, and I think that brings us to questions. Yay, we're at questions time. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Well, I'm gonna exit and see if you guys have any questions. We have about, oh, look at this. We have a half hour for questions. So if you guys have any questions, or if you want me to go over something a little bit more in detail, or if you want to take a look at the handouts and ask questions about those, I'll be more than happy to answer questions for you. And you are all have the ability to unmute yourselves. Anything? Don, did you have a question? You can unmute yourself. Nope, you can't unmute yourself? Okay. Let's see here. All right, try that now.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So actually, one of my questions, and hopefully Ash is following this as well. One thing I've not heard good explanation of is follow up for grants,
Mhm.
and what like you mentioned earlier, sending a thank you. Like if you
Right.
get a grant from like say the city, like a lot of us did, do we? I mean, how? What are some things we can do to make sure that we are not just doing the things to get the grant, but to follow up after to make sure that we are showing that we followed through, showing that we appreciate the what was done, etc.
Yeah, it's either thank you letter or thank you email can be done.
Okay.
And when I first put these together, years ago, it was a thank you letter. But now most people, you know, send emails back and forth. But make sure you keep a copy of that email
Okay.
as so when you sent it, take the send screen, make it a PDF and put it in your files to show that yes, you sent an email.
Okay.
And especially if they respond saying, oh, maybe they don't get a lot of thank you emails. And if they respond to you saying, well, thank you for your thank you, file
Okay.
that too. Mm-hmm.
And would that go to the person who is supervising the grant, or would that go to like you're the contact person usually for the grant?
Yeah, you can send it to the contact person, or you
Okay.
can send it to the program officer, who
Okay.
probably was the one that oversaw the review panel for the grant.
Okay. Perfect.
Mhm.
All right. That's that sounds easy enough.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Maria, I'm curious. This is Hannah from BHT. I'm curious if you could, I just love your insight into what you think some of the biggest barriers to successful grant writing is for especially small and new organizations.
Mhm. Basically having enough people to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm working with a client right now who only has two people, full-time people that can help, and they're so overburdened with trying to run the programs and get it up and running and stuff and keep it going. And then they're piled on, well, you need to do especially the executive directors, they always pile that, well, you need to find funding and money and write grants and stuff. Well, I think a lot of people who say that, especially if it's the board of directors that are directing the executive director, well, you need to write for more grants. They don't have the time to put together anything on the grant writing checklist. If they do have it, they might have to hire temporary people to put the stuff together or to sit down and write a project plan, or there's a lot of things that you can do to prepare for a proposal, but if they don't have the time to do it because they got other things, I think that's the biggest barrier, is that the board of directors are not recognizing that they're going to burn out their executive directors because they expect them to do this and this and also look for grants. So is that what you were asking about, Hannah?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you. And it also points to kind of the role of the board in that too, which I
Mhm.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome. Ash, you had a question? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to follow up a little bit with John's question, if that's okay.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to share that one thing that I did when I was an executive director, especially with private foundations, is yes, for sure, send an email saying thank you. But I would also ask them for feedback, other resources, and if they could connect me to other organizations that did similar work, anything to start relationship building. And I've had I had a lot of success with that, where I got connected to orgs that I never heard of or other resources that I didn't know about. It also ended up being, for a lot of these foundations, a pathway to additional funding, because there was more relationship there. It allowed them to ask me more questions, to learn more about our work. And that also helped me bring other folks along. Hey, you should be looking into this organization or that organization. So I think there are steps that you can take after a thank you note to make the just to make it more relational.
Mm-hmm. Great feedback, Ash. I appreciate that. I I never would have. Well, I did that too, but I don't. It doesn't. It's not on the forefront of my head. So thank you for adding that. And another piece too is if you didn't get the grant and you're offered and you can ask for feedback on why and how you can improve. Or as Ash said, ask them. If there's any other grantors that have similar things that you can apply for or build relationships with. And sometimes even if you ask for that, that makes them look for you the next time around when that grant comes around, when you're applying for it, that, oh yeah, that's right. They asked for feedback and let's see if they've improved what they did, to meet what we wanted. So they look for those type of things. Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry, can I add one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Again, like in that relational vein, another thing you can do is, before you submit applications, they usually have a point person that you can reach out to with questions. I recommend asking questions, getting some time on their calendar, because you're getting the name of your organization, you're getting yourself out there ahead of putting in your application. And I think that also can bring some success, especially with organizations that have never heard of you.
Mm-hmm. Another good point. And also some of the, as I said, they offer webinars for questions and answers, or they may even offer, like the Administration for Native Americans offers technical assistance for writing their grants, especially since they're the minimum page amount is, or the maximum page amount for their grant applications is 150 pages. So you have a lot to write and a lot to produce to send them in. So they offer their regional TTA centers to help you out for those things. So check around and see if they offer technical training and technical assistance. That could easily be a phone call with a consultant that they've hired. It could be attending the webinars for questions and answers. It could be attending another kind of webinar that they're offering for technical assistance. So, or they may have like training sessions that you can go to in person to walk through the entire RFP, and you can ask your questions then too. So thank you, Ash, for all those little points that you're adding. I appreciate it. Anybody else have any insight they want to share?
This is Dave. I'm not an insight, but a question.
Okay.
Is this is being recorded?
Yes, it is.
So it'll be available too, and how do we access that?
It will be available. We will have to run it through closed captioning, and then because we're going to be showing this next week in the evening from 5:30 to 7:30, and then we'll have the question and answer session live, so we can get more questions. And then Tom will do his magic, and Tom works with Brandon and edit everything out that doesn't need to be in there, and combine the questions and answers, and then we'll have a final video that we'll post to YouTube, and people can go there and watch the whole thing with all the questions and stuff and answers from both sessions.
So will that link to the YouTube link be sent out?
Yes, we'll be sending out to everybody who registered for all the events. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments, insights? experiences you want to share? So Heather and Hannah, I do have a question for you guys. When you Are you on the team that makes the RFPs for Better Health Together? And if so, does any of this help with making better RFPs?
That's actually a really good question. I have been it it depends on where the program is coming, where the RFP is developed in conjunction with leadership and our comms team.
Mhm.
So I think just about everyone at some point will touch on the process. And yeah, we constantly strive to make our RFPs and our entire like granting and contracting process more accessible, less cumbersome, less, unnecessary administrative pieces. We are constantly work to like streamline it. So anytime we can get information like this, it's super helpful.
Great.
And
That's good to know.
we are very open to feedback. If you are working with us and you're finding something to not be that way, feedback is really helpful. Of course, when we're passed through organizations and we're doing subcontracting for big federal or state dollars, we're constrained by a lot of those things. Yeah. But when it's it's more flexible, waiver dollars, maybe some other source, we are always trying to get rid of what is not necessary. Let's just get right down to what are we asking for and what do we need, and let's get money out the door.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. It looks like Hannah gave you a thumbs up while you were talking, so I guess she's in agreement with what you said.
Yes, I did. Thanks, Heather. And yeah, I second that. And I think one of the things I'm thinking about is that like simplified communication, how to make it really clear and understandable, even when we do have those more complicated, like we're working with subrecipients and have that the federal contracts, we're trying to check all the boxes. Like how can we reduce barriers at every step of the way? So that's really on our minds as we've kind of been building out some policies and practices around that. So again, and also want to echo what Heather said about feedback is great, suggestions are great, and we appreciate that from everyone who offers them.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. And thank you, Heather. Appreciate your guys' remarks. Anyway, you guys have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day. And then don't forget the workshop handouts. If you haven't gotten the link, Brandon shared it in the chat box again. So have a good afternoon, everybody, and take care. Thanks for joining us.